I'm going to ask my vice chair if she would at this time just talk about a little bit about Senator Yvonne Miller. I don't know if everyone had the opportunity to meet her or to know her, who's sitting on this commission right now. But before we get to that, the commission actually had received $50,000 budget appropriation for fiscal year 2022 to begin the process of planning a memorial tribute for Senator Miller to be placed in the Capitol. Susan Shar was planning to speak on the commission on the Women's Monument, but cannot attend, and will be sending information to the commission soon. However, she was individual that Senator Locke had a just such great friend, worked with her at a moral compass like no other. And if you would just share with us something about her and why she was why we feel that she's relevant enough to be, memorialized on this particular campus. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Miller was certainly an incomparable individual. She was first elected to the House of Delegates, the first African-American woman to be so elected, and certainly served with distinction from Norfolk. And she was an educator, and she taught at Norfolk State University for several years. But prior to that, she was a first grade teacher, and she always would say to people that sometimes as a committee chair, she had to use her first grade teacher skills in order to help people understand, that she was the person who was in charge of the committee. Many of you may remember during the vice presidential debate when Kamala Harris would say, I'm speaking. It was actually Senator Miller who originated that statement. She would always say to members of the committee, particularly her male colleagues, excuse me, I'm still speaking. And if you knew Senator Miller, you knew her voice. And it was such a commanding voice. Mm-hmm. After serving in the House of Delegates, she was elected to the Senate. And again, the first African-American woman to be so elected to the Senate. And again, a very commanding figure there in the Senate. And despite the fact that oftentimes Senator Miller was taken for granted, she oftentimes felt that she was being very disrespected, but she went about the business of what she called doing the work for which she was elected. Mm-hmm. And that was representing the constituents of the 5th Senatorial District out of the city of Norfolk. And she had a very strong passion for education, being an educator, and a very strong passion for what she called those who had been left out of the system, those who she felt particularly impoverished. I remember her asking, she served on rehabilitation and social services and ultimately became the chair of that committee back in 2007. And I remember her asking, she always asked very pointed questions, asking someone who was testifying on a bill. She asked a question one time. She said, I just have a question for you. And whenever she said that, people should have always taken notice because a bomb was about to be thrown. And she was always very nice about it. And she said, do you just simply have a problem with dumping on the poor? And the person was just taken aback. It was like, how do you respond, to a question like this? She's because, you just stood there and made all these statements. And she said, you're just dumping on the poor. She said, I just want to know if you just have a problem with dumping on the poor. So she as she said, she just went about the business of, as she said, taking care of business. And that was always her concern, and she would take that back to her community and to her constituents. And I will tell this one last story and then tell you why we decided that we wanted to do this in honor of her. When she got sick, and during those last few weeks, she knew that, of course, she knew that the end was coming, and she called Senator Lucas and I to her home. And so as we were sitting there, she said to me, she said, "Come here." And when Senator Miller called, you just did what she told you to do. And she said, "I want you to look after Senator Lucas." And so Senator Lucas looked at her and she said, "Senator Miller, I'm 10 years older than her." And Senator Miller said, "Anyway, like I said, I want her to look after you." And she said, "And you both know why I'm saying what I'm saying." So a week later is when she passed, actually on her birthday, which was July 4th. And so she was always a very formal, and she was my seatmate in the Senate for several years. And I would always be very, very cautious of whenever she decided she wanted to stand up, and I would just go, "Who's going to get it this time?" Because she wasn't someone who would stand up and speak a lot. But whenever she did, it was always something that she was very passionate about and very concerned about. Whenever she spoke, it was always in defense of children, always in defense of education, always in defense of the community that she loved so much. And we wanted to do this tribute to her for all her many firsts and for all of her many contributions, not just to Norfolk, but to the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Excellent. Thank you so much for giving us that insight. Many of us knew Senator Miller and adored her. And what you did not say, well, first of all, if she was here, I would let her know that you failed miserably in terms of taking care of Louis.
There's just some things you cannot do.
And then the second thing, for those who did not know, Senator Miller was about what? 5 feet. 5 feet tall.
Maybe.
But she walked with a big stick, okay? No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And she was commanding. Her presence was. And she would forever, and just the tidbits and the blessings in so many ways that she left for so many of us that knew her, had opportunity to talk with her and spend any time with her. You'll never forget what she was able to pass on and the legacy that's been left. And so at this time, does anyone else have anything that they want to add?